Hi friends, welcome to the second video on economics. Again we have taken reference and courtesy Paul Samuelson 7th edition for pure textbook understanding of key important things in the economic context. So today we will be discussing about problem of every economic society. So let's do it, because this is not a retake which I am doing, it's just from the heart, a clear simple presentation of what I noted from the textbook, and I'll try to explain to you in simple terms. Now ask yourselves, what could be the problems of every economic society? So the first problem which I foresee is, I've written key pointers which will help me. First is the problem of what, how and for whom. This is a basic question which every society in the economic front has to understand. What is to be produced? Goods, like for example guns, it could be anything like food, it could be any article on earth. How it is to be produced? That means it could be produced manually, it could be produced using high-tech machines, it could be produced using a mix of the two. So basically it is a tool which we'll have to understand. And for whom? Has it to be produced for the middle class, the rich class, or for the poor? How it is to be produced? So this is basically called the three important questions which every society keeps answering and asking itself. Now basically it drives us to one important conclusion. And what is that? Law of scarcity. Because assume if there was everything on earth which was unlimited food, unlimited labor, unlimited capital, then there will be no problem of what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. But unfortunately that's not the case, right? So in that context we will have to first understand that these are the key questions which everybody will have to face. Okay, now once you've addressed this, we have to also understand, we read, some of you must have read earlier theory of Maslow called Maslow's theory of needs. So for example, if you are poor, your basic need would be food, housing. Once you become slightly more affluent or in the middle class, you will look for some more luxuries, like maybe a small car or going to office. Or if you become really rich, then you may want a limousine or travel by air. So these needs keep changing from time to time. And these needs also drive the three questions which I have told you above, of what, how and for whom. Okay, now in this we will be talking about the challenges of production possibility curve. Now understand this carefully. Like for example, if you have, in the book it's an example given of butter versus guns. So if there is 0 amount of butter, then you can produce 15 guns. 1 amount of butter unit, then 14 guns. Similarly, let's say if you have 5 units of butter, then you can produce 0 guns. So what it shows is that there is a curve which is there, which shows that either at one point of time you can produce guns or butter or a combination of both, which is in the form of a production possibility curve. So this shows various options available. Kitna you can produce guns, kitna you can produce butter. Now in an ideal situation, let's say in India, if everybody is employed, then you can produce full optimum production possibility curve. That means ideal amount of butter or guns. But if there is underemployment, then you will not be able to produce the ideal amount. Let's say if the ideal capacity is 10 guns and 5 units of butter in a situation, then you will be only able to produce 5 guns and 3 units of butter. So that is something which we call as underemployment challenge in an economy versus full employment. So this is another challenge. Then in countries which are poor nations, what happens is that consumption of goods is only restricted to private goods, not public goods. For example, it will be pure consumption oriented goods in a poor country, not capital oriented goods like maybe high-tech machines or high-tech stuff, or maybe extravagant spending on services like travel, could be anything related to high-end equipment purchases. So it will be very restricted. So there the curve will be a very small curve which will be closer to both x-axis and y-axis. But as you become richer, then suddenly your consumption and overall pattern of demand for goods starts increasing. So developed country, the curve is more towards the right side, and poor countries the curve is more towards the left side because of limited resources. Okay, have you understood this? Okay, now we move to the next important point, which is called law of diminishing return. Now this is a no-brainer thing. Now what happens in this? For example, there is certain output of food. For example, there is a certain output, like ideally a piece of land can produce, let's say, 100 tons of wheat, example. Now that is the capacity maximum which a unit can produce, which is, now even if you start putting 10 labor people or people who can produce that ideal unit, that output will not increase beyond a level. So that is one thing. So even if you start putting 100 people on that piece of land, your overall level of returns will not, or the output will not increase to 200 or 300. So in other words, to understand this, for example, if you have one person, he can produce 10 units of output of food, 2 can produce 30, 3 can produce 35, 4 can produce 40. So the incremental increase of food production decreases, keeping the land unit same. So this is called the law of diminishing return. ये तो we have seen in day-to-day life that this works, and very practical thing. Then there is something which we know as laws of mass production. For example, I am setting a factory. I have certain amount of machines, labor, and I have a piece of land, and I can produce 100 cars. Now if I double everything, I double the land, double the labor, double the capital in terms of machines, then the output more than doubles. So this is called the economies of scale. That means you're able to produce more units, or what we call mass production happens because of all variables growing in same proportion. So you get more output, per unit output is much more in case all factors are increased evenly. So this happens in day-to-day life. You can also check yourself also. So this is an interesting concept. Lastly, in this chapter we also understand the theory of Malthus. Now who was Malthus? He was basically a person who realized that the population growth in olden days were happening very fast, literally like doubling. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. So he thought that it's a geometric progression, it will increase. And then he had proved this theory because at that time when we were in the early 1700s, 1800, everything was doubling, and because you added more people, output used to increase and everything used to happen. But he found an interesting thing, that if tomorrow the overall situation in which the food or the amount of food available starts reducing, then this population will not start growing geometrically. For example, if let's say world has X amount of land which can produce Y amount of total food, then even if population starts increasing or doubling, as he was saying, eventually a state will reach when food will become scarce. So people will start getting hungry and start dying. So there will be a control on population. So his theory was basically that if we do not check the population will grow unlimitedly, and then it will cause problems, and ultimately there will be not enough space on earth to stay. So which was proved wrong, because eventually in US and other developed countries the birth rate started decreasing. But this theory was very much used for at least 100 years or so, because people were seeing that doubling, because no matter how much population increased, food was always there. But a time came and other variables started coming into play, and industrialization started happening and various other things. So this theory then started losing its initial appeal. Okay, so this is basically what we have tried to cover in our this chapter. So basically addressing problems of the developed countries, developing countries, the economic challenges. We talked about what, how and from whom. Then we talked about production possibility curve. We talked about full employment versus partial employment, laws of diminishing return, economies of scale. So this will lead us to the next chapter, which we'll be discussing, and we'll be talking about certain other economic concepts further. Stay tuned and keep watching my educational videos. Thank you very much. And please note, this is purely for education purpose and should not be considered as any advice or any offer to sell anything. Thank you once again. Have a pleasant day.